Welcome, bros and brosophines. My name's Albrecht von Stollen, and today I'm gonna be reviewing episode 5 of Taisho Otome Otogi Banashi. Will this hold up to the previous episodes? I have a weird feeling about this. Before anything else, let's go! The last few days have been me just working on some projects. Episode 5 is quite relaxing, but something about this episode feels very familiar to me. As to why I think this, let that be explained here. After the opening parts, we pick up where we left off back in episode 4. Tamako wanting to become a doctor. The title is an odd choice given the first part, but that's not really an issue anyway, as we'll soon see. She mentions that she's gonna go to her uncle's place and his name is Tamasuke. I swear, the Shima family all have Tama in their names. Tamahiko, Tamako, even Tamayoshi and Tamasuke. Japanese naming choices are interesting, I will give it that. Tamahiko says that their dad won't allow it, but Tamako has a plan about that. Yuzuki asks Tamako what she feels and Tamako tells us what inspired her. That Tamako went from being so self-centered to caring about others after meeting Yuzuki. I'll save this for later. Tamako also mentions how the diabolical Shima family might not be able to help other people. More foreshadowing perhaps? She then mentions about marrying some rich dude and building a hospital for her, with Yuzuki and Tamahiko looking weirded out. Someone make these into meme faces. After this, the Shima siblings talk to each other. Tamahiko thanks Tamako for helping Yuzuki out, and they both get flustered. Tamako is being a tsundere again. Out of nowhere, Yuzuki happily pops up with futons and suggests that they all sleep in the same room together. No, this is not the familiar part from earlier. That's for later. The Shima siblings both turn into flustered tsunderes. We cut to a rather wholesome scene. Tamako asking Yuzuki to visit her in Kobe and Yuzuki singing a song. Tamahiko goes into a monologue about he and Tamako being quite alike. Both grew up being very lonely at home. He pats her head and reassures her about wanting to be a doctor. He even tells her that he never hated her. Even in this affectionate moment, Tamahiko still gets flustered. As much as I want to talk about this now, I will do it later. The next day, the three of them are at the train station, and Yuzuki gives Tamako what appears to be some packed lunch. Tamako reassures her with a cautery impression and Yuzuki's all happy about it. Tamako then tells her brother to come to her and tells him to pat her head while she's looking him straight in the eyes next time. And again, the Shima siblings are flustered about this. The train leaves and we get a scene of Tamako inside the train. After she opens the packed lunch, she notices that it has food in a book. It's about human anatomy with a note attached to it. Read when you're bored. She's crying tears of joy from the whole thing. We get a time skip where it's the title of the episode, September 1st. This confirms that this anime is indeed a slice of life anime, with all the pacing involved. Tamahiko is kinda motivated to study more because of Tamako doing it. Yuzuki shows up and brings him tea when she notices the small cat. She even calls the Kato Haruchan. Once the clock had struck 9 o'clock in the morning, Yuzuki remembers that today is market day and she goes down to town. Upon arriving to the market, we see scenes of people gossiping about Yuzuki when all of a sudden, Tamahiko shows up. He tells her that he wants to buy a book and helps Yuzuki carry her stuff anyway. Who knew that this man is a Chad? I'm gonna talk about this other Chad later as well. Yuzuki ends up blushing because of this act of manliness. We then get a soothing montage of them at the market. After buying some stationery, Tamahiko and Yuzuki go to a booksala. Here, we see more of Tamahiko's origin. He mentions that he has a very lonely childhood similar to Tamako. As he's lonely, he ends up reading books. After that flashback, he buys the books that he wants and we see a mysterious woman kind of following him the entire time. At night, we are treated to what appears to be a feast and Yuzuki greets Tamahiko a happy birthday, complete with her giving him a Chinese bellflower bookmark. It's revealed that Tamahiko has never celebrated his birthday before due to the fact that he has a lonely childhood and that this is his first time celebrating it, complete with a flashback. Yuzuki's kindness has touched him yet again and he's quite touched indeed. Tamahiko thanks her after hugging her. Something falls down and shatters which makes Tamahiko go to where it came from. his room. He sees a woman who's eating his caramel candy and sitting down at his table. Wait a minute, that's the weirdo from earlier. She greets him and Tamahiko is freaked out by her. After this, she tries to seduce him and she laughs at him for it. The weird woman leaves rather quickly. Yuzuki pops in and is worried about what has happened. She notices that the caramels are scattered on the floor and Tamahiko notices that his bookmark is gone, presumably stolen by the weird woman. He leaves the house on his bicycle and Yuzuki smells a different scent. The weird woman walks home and notices a bookmark along with a wallet that she had stolen off Tamahiko. And with that, the episode ends. Where do I begin? First, let's go after Tamako's plan. Yuzuki's kindness to Tamako over the last couple of episodes have touched the self-centered Tamako to the point where the latter ends up being considerate of others' emotions. As Tamako was lonely and noticed that no one cared about her, she ended up being selfish and egocentric. Yuzuki, being kind, broke all that, albeit gradually. Next, the tsundere siblings. As these two grew up being lonely, they tend to be quite shy about each other, especially with Tamako's one-sided hatred of Tamahiko. Yuzuki's kindness also enabled them to open up to each other, albeit in a very reserved way. What I had said in my previous episode holds true, and here's a clip of it.
While she did make up with Yuzuki in this episode, I have a feeling that she'll make up with Tamahiko in a future episode.
I'll put the link to that video in the description below. Tamahiko, being a manly man, works here as well. Instead of being so self-conscious about being gossiped at, he takes care of Yuzuki and he ends up being masculine because of it. Lastly, the weird woman. This feels very familiar as I've said earlier. I swear, I've seen this type of setup before, especially in Korean and Filipino dramas. A new woman seduces the leading man and infidelity ensues, complete with the leading lady fighting for her husband's love. Here in the Philippines, it's gotten so frequent in the local telenovelas that there is a Filipino term for this type of telenovela, a kabitserye. The word kabitserye translates to infidelity-centered telenovela. While these shows have always been around in Filipino television, the TV stations starting in the early 2010s had decided to replace most of their shows, especially anime, with kabitserye after kabitserye. While such shows are very popular here in the Philippines, especially among women because it hits all the catharsis notes, and due to relatability, the formula is stale and very boring at this point due to overuse. I just hope that the next episode does not end up becoming a kabitserye, as this show is what I expect to be the opposite of one. This episode follows chapters 9, 10, and the first half of chapter 11 of the manga. Yuzuki's kindness touching the Shima siblings is quite relaxing, along with Tamahiko getting his first birthday and Tamako's mini-arc ending. I recommend this episode in these trying times. Come join me next week as I'll review episode 6. Please like, share, and subscribe.